Breathe in and let the world slow its turning. Dawn arrives like a secret remembered, not sudden, not loud. A soft unwrapping of light at the edge of the hills. Mist lies low, a living veil that moves like water, pooling in hollows, slipping along ridges, hiding and revealing with patient grace. The air tastes of cold stone and wet earth, of leaves freshly rinsed by night. Each blade of grass holds a bead of morning, each fern a small mirror catching the first blush of sun. The hills wear robes of pale blue and silver, layered like soft thoughts. Contours unfold slowly, one after another, until the whole landscape breathes as a single body. Paths disappear into fog and reappear on the next slope, braided trails stitched by animal and time. Trees lift their branches like slow hands, fingers spread to receive the quiet light. Leaves tremble in slow applause, dew trembling off into the clean air. Sound is gentle here. A distant river hums a constant thread beneath the mist, a low ribbon of motion that binds valley to valley. Birdsong surfaces in small, careful notes, not a chorus, but a sequence of solitary gifts. A flute-like trill, a soft call answered by another far away. These sounds do not demand attention. They exist alongside the silence, like soft punctuation in a long, unhurried sentence. Mist moves like memory, thick where the valley gathers breath, thin where the ridges drink the sun. It holds the world in suspension, a temporary hush that softens edges and smooths the mind. Walking becomes slower than a step. It becomes a rhythm matched to the rise and fall of vapor. Feet find stones worn kindly by seasons. Hands brush against moss, so soft that the touch feels like prayer. There is an economy to movement here. Each gesture is measured, each breath a careful exchange with the air. Light arrives in parts. At first, a suggestion, a warmer gray at the eastern rim, then a hint of gold that grows as if fed by something unseen. The hillside catches that light and spills it across fern and rock. Shadows shrink and soften as color builds from the inside out. A single shaft pierces the mist, narrow as a thought and warm as a memory, striking a patch of lichen and making it glow. Small lives make themselves known in the half-light. A hare slips through reeds, its motion a whisper. A deer pauses, head lifted, ears tuned to every shift in the air. Then it bends, slow and ceremonial, to nibble the tender tips of grass. In the sodden leaf litter, beetles glint like tiny moving gems, each carrying the color of soil and rain. A spider's web hangs between two branches, threaded with dew. Each droplet beads like a miniature world, reflecting 100 tiny suns. The landscape holds an old patience. Ridges stand like deliberate questions. Valleys answer slowly with fog. Stone remembers rain from centuries past. The shape of a rock knows the weight of thousands of winters. Roots grip in long, faithful knots beneath the surface. Unseen hands that steady slopes and cradle soil. Everything that appears fragile is, in truth, remarkably resilient, a quiet architecture built out of persistence. Paths open and close beneath the mist. A lane may reveal a wooden fence, half swallowed by moss, its posts leaning like aged companions. A field will emerge, emerald and slick with moisture, the grass swaying with an unseen heartbeat. Here and there, Small clearings act as glass panes into the morning, spaces where the light collects and lingers, where the world seems to speak in a softer voice. The sun rises, patient and unhurried. It is not a declaring fire, but a gradual warming, an unveiling of texture and tone. Lichen and lichen-hued stones acquire depth. The bark of trees rings with subtle color. Puddles, once dull, become pools of polished glass. Breath aligns with this movement. Inhale, a cooling draft scented with fern and earth. Exhale, a warming tide as light meets skin. The body loosens. The mind becomes like the sky above, clear where necessary, cloud soft where needed, vast enough to contain small passing things. Time here is elastic, folded like cloth into many quiet layers. Minutes extend into reveries. An hour might pass, as if in a single long exhalation. There is no urgency to measure. Tasks shrink to simple acts, noticing the way mist clings to a twig, the precise tilt of a hawk on the thermal, the tiny determined blaze of a wildflower pushing through damp earth. Attention slows until it feels less like effort and more like settling, a decision to rest within the scene rather than move through it. The morning deepens. Mist lifts just enough to reveal a distant ridge, the silhouette of hedgerows stitched along the contour like slow handwriting. Sunlight pools in hollows, bringing warmth to stones and calling insects into sudden activity. A dragonfly hovers above the river's edge, wings a blur that flickers with the light. From a farmhouse far down, a bell may toll twice, both notes swallowed by distance but somehow present, like a punctuation mark in the landscape's long sentence. Paths lead to quiet surprises. A stand of birch may appear, trunks pale as bone against the green, their leaves fluttering like soft coins. An ancient oak, broad-shouldered and patient, offers a hollow at its base where moss forms a green cushion, a tiny sanctuary in miniature. Here, the land invites slow ceremony, sitting, breathing, listening to the slight rustle as air moves across older branches. The sense of being in the world without command is freeing. Presence becomes a gift given and received. Shadows shift as the sun climbs, the mist thins, and details sharpen. Peat bogs glisten with a muted luminescence. Heather crowns pockets of soil with purple and mauve accents. A small stream, at first a thin silver thread, becomes a confident ribbon, revealing the shape of its bed as it winds through the glens. Where water crosses rock, tiny eddies spin like gentle questions, dissolving and recomposing themselves without hurry. Movement here is respectful. A fox crosses a ridge with the deliberation of a story unfolding. Quick, precise, then gone. A flock of starlings rises suddenly in a single living cloud, then falls apart into scattered specks that settle again among the hollows. Every motion feels like punctuation rather than proclamation, small, sacred, perfectly placed. The light discovers color hidden in the hollows, the warm ochre of clay exposed by a spring, the blue-green of wet stone, the soft brown of peat. It also brings an awareness of scale. Hills that seem distant and insurmountable in the gray melt into approachable forms. What once felt like vast separation collapses into near intimacy. The land draws close, as if inclined to conversation. Between the ridges, the air carries scents like memories reborn, the sharpness of crushed time, the sweetness of alder catkins, the mineral clarity of new rain. Breath becomes a ledger of these small gifts, a record kept in silence. The body drinks them in without thought. The mind follows, finding in each aroma a gentle anchor. By mid-morning, the fog becomes companion rather than curtain. It moves in slow patterns, shaped by the invisible hand of temperature and wind. Sometimes it gathers in low bowls, a thick, living carpet. At other moments, it thins into veils that brush the cheek of the hill and pass on. This multiplicity delights the eye and steadies the heart, for the land shows its many faces without demand for judgment. In patches where mist remains stubborn, life continues in softer focus. Moss colonies expand like quiet cities, their domes and alleys forming texture underfoot. Fungus glimmers under logs, ranging in color from the pale cream of new growth to deep, earthy tones. A slug, patient and gleaming, traces a slow silver line along a stone, a map of perseverance made visible for a moment. Small human marks appear with gentle restraint. An old stone wall, moss-clad and halfway reclaimed, carries the handwork of years into the wild. A shepherd's gate, left ajar, suggests passage without demand. These traces do not dominate. They integrate into the scene as if always intended, reminders that care and tending are part of the landscape's ongoing breath. The day presses on. Light moves like a slow tide, changing the feel of each hollow and ridge. As warmth increases, so does the soundscape. Bees begin their low industry, a chorus of wings working through clover and blossom. Grasshoppers announce their presence with a steady, patient rhythm. Their music is small, but constant, threading through the larger hush like a gentle seam. Stillness remains the axis around which all spins. It is possible to stand at a ridge and feel the world pivot on a silent center. Clouds wander low or high, changing the tenor of light, but the deeper quiet persists. The unspoken chord beneath all movement. Even when activity reveals itself, it does so in gentle gestures, honoring the unhurried pace of the hills. The land invites a kind of surrender, not to loss, but to presence, to allow the mind to settle like sediment in clear water, letting thoughts fall away until only sensation remains, the warmth of light, the cool of mist, the rhythm of breath, the small insistence of life. In this space, the inner landscape softens to match the outer. In the hills of mist, the self finds conversation with silence and learns to listen. Morning continues its slow unfolding, each moment a small revelation, and as light begins to balance, pouring evenly across slope and vale, there is a sense that everything necessary is already present. No need to seek, no need to hurry. The world is generous in its quietness, offering time and space in equal measure. Endless afternoons await, but here, in the soft dawn and gathering day, the heart learns the language of stillness. Each inhalation becomes an offering, each exhalation a return. The mist moves on, shifting the scene gently, and the hills keep their silent watch, patient, steady, and luminous. Midday arrives without announcement. The mist, thinned by the steady warmth of the sun, lifts itself from the valleys and rises into the sky, leaving a faint shimmer in the air, a memory of its passing. The hills stand unveiled now, their contours sharper, their greens deepened by the slow burn of light. The day stretches wide, a gentle expanse of gold and blue. The sky, polished by the morning's breath, opens like an endless mirror, its edges softened by thin threads of vapor still clinging to the peaks. The air hums with quiet energy, not noise, but life moving at its own deliberate pace. Grasses sway in the slow wind, their movements synchronized like a great, breathing ocean. Each blade catches the sunlight for a moment, before releasing it back into motion. Butterflies drift lazily between clusters of wild thyme and bellflower, their wings painting fleeting colors onto the warm air. Rivers carve silver lines through the folds of the land. From above, they gleam like threads of light, woven through the fabric of the earth. The sound of water is everywhere, sometimes near, as a steady whisper over stone, sometimes distant, a murmur beneath the calls of birds that circle high above the ridges. In this hour, even time seems to pause to listen. Everything moves, yet nothing hurries. Bees trace their invisible maps between flowers. A lizard warms itself upon a flat-ass rock, its stillness a perfect reflection of the mountain's patience. The hills seem to speak in the language of sunlight and silence, sentences written in shadow, punctuated by the cry of a single hawk drifting over the valley. The earth glows with quiet vitality. Tiny seeds carried by wind settle into soft soil. Roots stretch down, slow and deliberate, seeking water, seeking life. Above them, clouds gather into soft herds, their shapes shifting with the breeze, never the same from one breath to the next. The land listens to the sky, and the sky, in turn, listens to the land. Here, in the still heat of midday, the mind loosens its hold on thought. The body sinks into its natural rhythm, the rhythm of air and light, of movement and stillness, of being and becoming. It feels as though the hills themselves are breathing, their slopes rising and falling in perfect calm. A heron moves through the shallows of a nearby stream. Its reflection, almost perfect, trembles with each ripple. It steps slowly, deliberately, pausing between movements as if time itself waits for it to pass. When it finally takes flight, its wings open like pages of a long-forgotten book, and the air beneath them bends in silent reverence. Somewhere farther down the valley, a wooden bridge creaks in the heat, old timbers expanding and sighing with the day. The sound carries easily through the still air, a small human echo within the vast conversation of earth and sky. The mist, though gone from sight, still lingers in the heart. It has left its calm behind, a softness that remains even in the brightness of noon. Its memory cools the air, a gentle reminder that peace is not bound to weather or hour. It is the quiet beneath movement, the still center within change. The hills shimmer with that peace. They do not move, yet they are never still. Wind brushes their sides in invisible waves, touching grass, stone, and wildflower alike. Every small movement adds to the whole, a great symphony of calm creation. As the sun begins its slow descent, the light changes again. What was bright becomes mellow. What was harsh softens to gold. Shadows grow long and gentle, stretching across slopes like slow-moving rivers. The air cools, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and soil warmed all day. Clouds drift lower, their undersides tinged with amber. Birdsong returns in waves, not loud, but tender, each note a farewell to the sun. The river mirrors this transformation, its surface shimmering with the last light, then deepening into bronze as the sun slips toward the horizon. The world begins to exhale again. Heat releases, colors settle, the rhythm slows. The hills, bathed now in the quiet fire of sunset, seem to breathe a deeper calm. The edges blur once more. The mist returns. It rises gently, rolling upward from the hollows, spilling over stone walls and grassy ridges. It fills the air with a cool hush, folding the land back into its familiar softness. Every valley becomes a cradle of cloud, every summit a lonely island in a silver sea. Within that sea, sound fades, the river quiets, the wind grows faint, and even the birds' calls become muted, as though distance itself has thickened. Light dissolves into a soft, pearly gray. The sky and the hills merge once again, indistinguishable, infinite. In this returning mist, the world feels newly made. The mind, emptied by the day's slow unfolding, becomes still as water, reflecting everything without effort, holding nothing. Night approaches. The first stars begin to show, their faint glow trembling through the moving veil. They seem close, not distant fires, but small lamps hung within reach, each one flickering with quiet promise. As darkness gathers, the mist thickens again, wrapping the hills like a dream within a dream. No boundary remains between air and earth, between silence and sound, between the seen and the unseen. The day's long rhythm resolves into peace. Light becomes memory. Motion becomes rest. The hills sleep, and through their stillness, the world remembers how to breathe. The wind drifts once more through the tall grass, gentle, unhurried, its whisper carrying through the night like an echo of dawn. And somewhere beneath the veil, the earth turns again, slow, constant, forever wrapped in its own soft mist. Mist thickens and folds the hills into a single soft shape, a landscape hushed beneath its own breath. Night arrives not as an event, but as a gentle turning, a slow, inevitable page in a book that has always known its ending and its beginning. The air cools, the scent of damp earth sharpens into a clean mineral clarity. Every surface drinks the dark differently. Stone gathers a coolness like memory. Leaves catch the last damp like small private lamps, and the river curves into a silken lane of reflected dusk. Moonlight makes a quiet path across the wet grass, a pale ribbon guiding the eye without command. It does not demand attention. It only offers itself, a soft suggestion of silver across the world. Shadows become less harsh and more like companions, long and familiar, folding into hollows and holding the warmth of the day like a remembered conversation. Where mist is thin, the shapes of trees become voice-like, attuned to the hush, speaking in the slow grammar of trunks and branches. Crickets begin their patient song, a steady, elemental rhythm that stitches together the fields and the hedgerows. Their music is not hurried. It is an ancient metronome that finds the pulse beneath the thoughts of waking life. Fireflies light here and there like scattered promises, small phosphorescent statements that return and vanish with no urgency, only presence. Their glow seems less a light than a punctuation in the dark, a soft, exhaled sigh that the night itself releases. A path appears where there was none, revealed by the moon's faint hand, as if the land remembers every step ever taken upon it. Along that path, stones cold from hours of shadow hold droplets that tremble and then settle, like small worlds momentarily awake. Moss shows its deeper green, ferns curl tighter, protective and tender. The valley breathes in a measured cadence, and the chest of the land rises and falls with the same slow ancient timing that all quiet things honor. Thought softens in the presence of such continuous calm. The mind ceases to rush to conclusions or cling to lists of tasks. It becomes instead a clear surface on which the night places images without demand. Memories arrive like mist, partial, luminous, and then pass away again, leaving behind a residue of gentle understanding. The inner landscape matches the outer, hills of long attention, valleys of rest, ridges of small certainties smoothed by the slow weather of days and nights. A barn owl glides without sound between oak and elm, its flight a living punctuation that stuns the hush into deeper listening. Eyes open and close in the dark world, not human eyes, but eyes of fox and badger and hedgehog, all moving with the careful economy of beings for whom the night is home. Each animal becomes a small drama of intent, brief and entire, moving across the stage of grass and stone in a choreography older than speech. The river, always present, though often hidden, becomes a mirror of the sky and an archive of movement. It holds the moon's line like a drawn thread and rolls it along pebbles, carrying light and memory together. Occasionally, a leaf slips into that current and begins a slow voyage, turning as if to accept the world's slow lesson, that moving with the flow is also a form of belonging. Clouds, when they pass overhead, become soft bells. They muffle the far lights of distant villages and compress the star field into a more intimate map. Where piercings of open sky occur, constellations hang like old friends, their arrangement stable and kindly. Star after star tends the night, appearing as if by invitation, each one a small, unwavering promise of continuity. In places where the mist collects more generously, the world turns into watercolor. Boundaries bleed and colors cross into one another, creating an effect that the eye reads as hush. Hollows become secret groves. Fallen logs become quiet altars for small, patient lives. Moss gardens gather dew in their cup-like forms, and briefly transform into miniature lakes, reflecting nothing but their own green stillness. This time of night is an offering, not an escape from life's demands, but a recentering, a chance to remember how small things and vast things agree. The hills, when seen in this light, insist gently on perspective. What seems urgent in midday becomes, in evening, only a single grain in a field. What feels large dissolves into the texture of grass and lichen. In that dissolving, relief arrives. The relentlessness of modernity loosens its grip, and the heart finds room. The landscape invites a slow ritual, to stand, to feel, to name nothing. To place the hand on a cool stone and feel the slow warmth that the sun had kept inside. To cup palms beneath a droplet and notice its exact, small temperature. To listen for the barely audible music in which crickets, river, and owl have arranged themselves. These are acts of attention that, by their quietness, realign the body to a more patient tempo. When the moon travels behind a high cloud and the night seems darker than before, illumination comes instead from within the mind. A memory surfaces softly, a half-remembered poem, the cadence of a song sung in childhood, the smell of a particular bread baked by an absent hand. And with that memory comes a tender warmth, like embers glowing in hidden hearts. The past does not clamor, it nudges, both comfort and teacher, in one gentle motion. As the night deepens, temperature drops and the air becomes crisp, clean as polished glass. Each breath is more noticeable. The lungs measure the cool by a minute and satisfying tension. Ridges are outlined in lighter gray. Rocks show up as sculpted reliefs. The world is tactile, available to touch and to sense in ways daytime glosses over. The hills practice a slow liturgy of light and shade. At times, the fog returns in long surges, wrapping low hollows and moving like an exhalation. It carries with it the faint, distant sound of a waterfall that never gets close but remains present as idea and sensation. The mist's slow arrival and departure become a lesson in impermanence and acceptance. To watch it is to watch, letting go. Distant human lights blink on and off, modest and respectful of the land. A cottage window may glow like a lantern in the deep, but its light is small and humble, an intimate warmth, lost in the scale of the night, but precious to the lives it touches. These scattered, polite illuminations feel less like intrusion and more like companionship, reminders that while the earth sleeps, some hearts are awake, tending, remembering, keeping watch. There is a tenderness to evening weather that speaks to the heart. Rain, if it comes, arrives as a fine whisper, each drop a small accent on leaves and stone. It is not a storm but a blessing, making the air smell of salt and earth, and clearing the world as if wiping a slate clean for new thought. Under such rain, movements slow further, footsteps soften, conversations shrink into the comfort of low voices. In the hush after rain, everything smells renewed. Green is brighter, even amid shadow. The river quickens its voice with the small contributions from braided streams, growing confident in its flow. Birds that roost low shake their feathers and adjust, and a fox may step out in the hush to test the fresh air. At the edge of night, not yet midnight, but late enough for small wholeheartedness, the mind begins to drift toward larger tides. Thoughts that during the day felt important recede, like netted fish released back to the sea. More essential concerns surface, the warmth of a beloved's hand, the sight of a child's slow breath at sleep, the quiet dignity of an elder's face. These are not the urgent lists of accomplishment, but the marrow of life's meaning, small, immediate, and true. The moon travels its arc, and with it the temperature and the tone of night shift. When the moonlight brightens, in a phase of fullness or favorable geometry, the landscape takes on a crystalline clarity. Every leaf edge becomes a filigree, every stone a sculpture in miniature, every blade of grass a polished line. Such nights invite a different kind of attention, one that appreciates form and texture, that revels in the visible architecture of nature's small details. Sometimes, in that high clarity, the shapes of distant hills look almost like remembered sculptures, carved by patient hands of long weather. Contours suggest figures, and imagination, unforced, composes faint stories in those shapes. Tales of long-ago shepherds, lovers' meetings, or the simple passage of animals that once made those tracks. None of these stories demands belief. They exist as soft possibilities, whispers in the ear of the land. Toward the later hours, stillness becomes almost absolute. The cricket's song thins, the river's murmur lowers, the nightbird hushes and becomes a shadow of motion. In such deep quiet, the self, that restless attention, finds a particular stillness, as if a hand had finally smoothed the restless surface of thought. Breath lengthens, heart rate slows. The body's small mechanical noises fall into harmony with the landscape. In this cultivated silence, insight often arrives not as a flash, but as a gentle bloom. A truth that once seemed complex reveals itself to be simply shaped. Kindness is not grand gesture, but habitual softness. Courage is not only boldness, but the daily decision to remain present. Joy is not explosion, but a steady, small warmth. These realizations do not change the world in any outward way, but they change the relation to it, rendering every movement more deliberate and tender. Night keeps its watch until the pre-dawn moment, when darkness thins imperceptibly and the world prepares to renew itself. There is a subtle crescendo in the air, the first call of a sky bird, the rustle of a waking beast, the hush of dew heavy on new leaves. Something begins to stir, not the day yet, but a readiness, the land aligning like an instrument tuned for the next song. At that verge, the hills of mist become the most generous teachers. They show that stillness and movement are not opposites, but partners, that to be present is to be in a constant, unforced exchange with life, that the smallest acts, a careful step, a mindful breath, the tending of a garden, are the truest forms of devotion. As dawn approaches, the pale line of the horizon lightens imperceptibly. Night loosens its hold, and the first breath of morning slips in, carrying with it the possibility of starting again. The mist, which had thickened into a comforting cloak, begins to sigh and lift, finding new shapes to wear. Birdsong at first tentative, then confident paints the air. The world exhales and inhales in a measured loop. In that new light, the small rituals of the night take on new meanings. The dew on a blade becomes a testament to patience, the frog's soft call, a hymn to survival, the fox's tracks, a poem of subtle presence. Each morning is not repetition, but a careful unrolling of possibility, an invitation to remember the stillness encountered in the dark and carry it like a secret companion into the day. This is the final lesson of the hills, that peace is not an endpoint, but a practice. It is discovered in the patient watching of weather, in the gentle attention given to small lives, in the willingness to let breath slow and thoughts soften. It arrives when the land and heart sync their rhythms, when the inward and outward landscapes speak the same quiet language. And so the day begins again. Mist lifts, light pours, life stirs, and the hills hold their vigilant calm as if to teach that every cycle, every dawn, every dusk, every quiet hour in between is an opportunity to return steadily and lovingly to stillness. If this calm journey through the hills has brought a moment of stillness, let that peace remain. Subscribe to Most Beautiful for more softly narrated journeys through the quiet rhythms of the world, where every hill, every breeze, and every shadow is a reminder that tranquility is always near.